So let's start with this story. I started thinking about this story years ago, and I even presented it here, I think 2 years ago in AnimatekaPRO. It was then still in the first pre-production progress, so there was a script that was done, and the script is basically based on my crazy experience with hunting mice in my house, because mice tend to take on whatever they confront, or they don't see obstacles in their life. So what happened a lot is I was putting out these traps, and mice at some times were falling into my room because they were searching for food. On other times, roof was covered with snow, so I had to wait to replace the traps. And when I came back, there was only skeletons of old mice eaten up by their friends. So I started thinking about this friendly relationship between mice, and at the same time, it's a relationship we all have. So very often it happens that, for example, someone who has a lot doesn't give to the poor, or someone who feels like it doesn't do by the rules that they put. So I started composing this story first with Tatjana Urbic here in Slovenia. Before, she was also a part of Animateka team, and now she often writes stories, so we did this together. And then Henry came in. Henri Angremy is a Parisian writer. We met in China, a festival where I went to present my first movie, The Weasel. So he was the one doing the script for us and then finishing the story with me. So when Igor and the team contacted me 10, 12 days ago that I'm to present here, I was still in this post-production process. At the same time, December is always crazy with workshops. I have adult people waiting for me at the workshop, and they're all by COVID rules, so it's possible to do workshops right now. What I'm showing you right now is my feelings when I saw that this is a workshop film I did to tell them how I feel doing this presentation. So it's thrilled, and at the same time it's very nervous, like I was when we were copying the files. Okay, so this is just before the film started being drawn on paper, after the script was almost done. This is my son. We were walking the mountains during the COVID era. There was a lot of people everywhere, especially in the mountains, and we come by this house. So this is an old cheese-making house. The cows were underneath. They were warming the house, the upward part, and the upper part was for cheese production. So every year, even now, some of these houses in the mountains are only active in the summer. So when the winter comes, they usually finish producing the cheese. They take off all these cheese rolls and take them down to the lower ground along with their cows. And of course, some cows have to carry all the cheese. So this is the place that I wanted to copy in this film. This is my son asking if it will be a love story. No, it's a story about greed and a story about two mouse friends. Okay, so what I wish to do today is to show you how we went through this passage. I will first start by showing you an excerpt of the film. It's a 2-minute long excerpt, so you can see how it will look like, and of course you can see it in the cinemas next year in festivals. Okay, so these are parts of the film. Everything is done on the computer, like my first film, The Weasel. I always start off with this romantic idea of doing everything on paper, and then it comes to the complexity of my ideas, and financially it's never possible. So we always come to doing things on TV Paint and then combining with all these very nice modern tools which allow you to use only a simple computer to compose stuff. And this is done by a team of 4 animators. And then, of course, 2 more people who composited all these beautiful backgrounds. Yes, there's another sound. I will just turn it off. It doesn't matter. Okay, so as you see, there's a lot of work in the textures and in the feeling this film gives us, because I always tend to work on the atmosphere a bit more than the story itself. I like narrational, simple stories because most of my work is meant for children and, of course, for their parents with all these crazy, dark ideas about life and people. But in the end, we always come to doing stuff on the computer. So this film was a 4-phase process. I can say that the first sketch was the main part of the deal. Marica Kicušić from Serbia, who is a really good animator, worked with me on the 2 characters. And there's also this cat character we shared a little bit. Afterwards, I had 2 young, very talented people helping in the process from Invida, and Invida is the production company, if you didn't hear. So one of them started off doing the lines, these very nice comic book lines, which are hard to do when you don't know animation. And the other one was doing aquarelle look, also in the computer, which is also hard to do when you don't follow the principles of animation. So if everything is blinking too much, it doesn't look fluid enough for people to watch. So we had to find out a way how to do this. Okay, the first thing I did, I presented them with the animatic. Of course, the process of animatic was long. So the first one was really simple. I drew everything on very small pieces of paper, then I scanned them, I put them in TV Paint because I wanted to have everything in the same app we will use afterwards. And this is how it looks. So it's not perfect. You can understand what's happening, but there's no dialogue. So we have to understand it better. So the process of animatic took me about 2 months. And we came also to shortening the story enough and understanding it better. So this is how it looked in the end. For anyone who does animation in the room, I must say the very important thing is to number your shots, and when you do hand-drawn animation, it's also to number the drawings. So you can see in the top side corner, this is the 25 frame per second frames, and these are the TV Paint frames that we actually use. So when I said, go to the 100 frame in TV Paint, he went to the exact frame and corrected the animation for me. Okay, so this is some of the animatic that we had, and this is basically all of the versions I had. So the list goes on. This is only a few of them, a few of the exports. And what the producer did to me, what they always do, is he said, okay, the animatic is great, I really like the story, it's working well, the flow is nice, but please just cut out 2 minutes of the film. So I said, it's not possible, and then with a few convincings, we came to the right shortening, and I think it was a great idea. It's always better to cut on the animatic than on the animation itself. When I was doing Weasel, I think we did 14 minutes of animation, and we ended off with an 11-minute film, which is still too long. So it would be like even half of the animation could be cut, and the film would work. It would still be okay. So these are a few of the backgrounds from the film. These are stills from what we did. And I must say, Urban Breznik, a Slovene guy doing perfect backgrounds for games and other projects. He lives in Spain, so we worked at a distance. But because we were schoolmates doing all the first films together, we were able to work this way, and it wasn't a problem for us. As you can see, the color spectrum is changing a lot, so we had to have a simple and very easy process. These were the first thumbnails he did, because he had to do around 60 to 80 backgrounds. We wanted to have the process simple enough so I could correct already the first basic things about the room and the house you saw before on the photo and everything else. So these were the first thumbnails he did. So he just took my animatic shots and tried to put them into aquarelle. And here you can see how his aquarelle looks like when it's in Photoshop. And then when you put the texture, aquarelle texture he made many, of course, but he used them to make this look more like aquarelle on paper. We started off with the romantic idea of doing at least the backgrounds on paper, but this was a much better idea. At least for the long distance process, I must say. Okay, Smartsheet is very important for us. When we worked in this, we had to find a way to organize the work with all these people. So even if you put a basic Excel table, I must suggest always just put all of the phases of animation under each shot and try to follow who is doing which and what is the correction next to the names. I would love to show you this online, but I would lose too much time by opening the same thing here. So you must imagine it's just a simple Excel sheet, which I can maybe show in the end if Igor says there's enough time. Okay, I will show you a few of the animation processes we did, and this is the file structure we had. So what I like a lot are shot numbers in folders, and then inside those there are always versions in a sequence. So we always know which version is corrected and what is the change and so on. You can see on the left that the pre-production process is the first, then the materials with the backgrounds were basically done a little bit in advance and a lot during the work on animation. So this is the type of process we have now with the digital age. We do everything not so much in sequence anymore. Okay, so the first shot was very difficult because of course there's this, so this was the animatic, it doesn't say a lot. And the first shot presents how the animation will look like, and it also presents everything else in the film. The style, the feeling, the atmosphere. So these dots are really important. You could say, like, why is this snow falling in such low frame rate? But this is exactly what I wanted. I didn't want it to look so much digital and with those perfect flows, because also the animation is done 12 frames per second, and it's important to have this introduced in the first shot already. So how we worked. What is very important to me is also to be able to edit my film on the go. So when I'm also an animator, I usually don't have a lot of time to edit. What we did, every time someone did a new version, so this is a version of shot 12, they also copied this version and renamed this first file. And this first file was part of an edit that always had the last shots in it. So whenever I opened it up, I could see the last version of our progress, of what everyone was doing. So this is the name of Marica here. This is Veronica, who was doing the colors. And this is Jošt Češko, who came in as compositor, and he also did hand-drawn effects animation. I will now show you how this looked. So the first drawn over animatic shot was this. And then when she did some corrections, which usually I did online because we were here still in the hard COVID times. We were working from Serbia to Slovenia, and she was doing her character here. Okay. Then a few of the lines were already done, and there was this sketch of the background. And we also did a flat surface for the color, because the color was done in this very simple progress. When you do illustration, you know this progress. It's doing the basic color of the character, which would be brown, for example, and then you put lights and darks. And when you do this, you can also control how you animate the lines, even the aquarelle lines, so they don't jump too much. This is the last sketch we had when Veronica did her color. And then it went into After Effects, and this is the final from After Effects. Jost had to do all these crazy frames of rotation in Photoshop, and then he combined them with the animation. Just for you to imagine, the compositing was done when only one person would work on it, maybe in 4 months. And even also the animation was done in 4 months per person. So 4 people did this 8-minute film for 4 months, and then another person had to work this long to do the compositing. Okay, just another note on the sound design. When we were doing sound design, some minor corrections on the edit were also done. And of course, this means a lot of sound effects, and what people do in the Foley studio don't line up anymore. So very often what you will have to do is to compare the edit with the old sound and the new sound and just see the differences. And then what sound people don't like is re-editing their sound part. So it's very much requested from the director to just note where the changes came and what is the difference in timing. And that's how I do it fastest, just put the changes right next to what I see. Does anyone have a question on the process? Anything?
You were saying 4 people in 4 months, 8 minutes of animation.
That's it.
But at the end, the final length is longer, right?
It's 8 minutes and 30 seconds for the credits. So the final film is still there, but the people who worked on it were not working all at the same time. They did 4 months, but first I worked only with Marica. And then when we were able to work together after the epidemic, the other 2 came and we started working on the line and then on the color separately. So I was coordinating them, and at the same time I was still animating the other character and doing the edits. And then after, let's say, 6 months from the start, we had the animation, but there were a lot of corrections that I wanted to do alone, and I did them later after the vacation.
And you're saying, Timon, actually you had to cut the animatic, so you cut it, what, for 3 minutes? Approximately?
It was cut a lot, yeah. I mean, the script was written for 7.5 minutes, but then we saw it's not totally aligned with what you get in the end. So it was 9 minutes or even a bit more. And because we didn't want the situation with 14 minutes of animation, I just took another 1.5 months re-editing it and trying to get it better. In the end, it came to 7.5, and now the film is 8 minutes long.
That's actually, I'm asking because also for the students being present, it would be wise actually to think about this, the length, and to predict everything already before the animatic, no? Because as you said, luckily you understood that you need to do it, as the producer told you, and you were suffering because like you had to throw out quite a lot of your work, but then you were saying as well that you kind of understood that this would be better for the final film, right?
That's true. I mean, in the end, festivals don't like to accept films that are very long when you are not a famous person. So it's not a good idea to do a too long film when it's not exotic enough for them to accept it anyways. I think when you have a narrative and we have children's films, or you have an experimental film, you are on the same level. They often tend to reject them just because festival films are often more, let's say, non-narrative or more personal. So when I work on films for children, I saw with the first one, I should always be below 10 minutes, and 8 minutes is a sure end. I'm showing another shot just to tell you how hard it was for me to decide about the technique, the style. In the end, it was again an economical decision, and at the same time something that looked more legible. But still, often you are in that point where you don't know, and it's good to do experiments before you do the real animation. So just experiment on the first 2 shots or some, and after you are decided enough, you bring in the team and do everything else. So I will now show you how I felt when I finished the animation process. Even before the sound was finished, it's a big relief, and usually you don't want to go back to animating. And very often you say, I will never do this again, but in the end, we always restart the process. So this was putting the stamp on the finished project. And of course, we like to lick the stamps even in the COVID times.